I think that all eights go negative. I think that that's a place that where we feel we're being more real
That's
is
true.
by is by connecting with the negative, and it takes a long time to realize I'm not being more real. I'm not bringing more truth to this conversation. I am just being negative.
Yes.
There is just something that runs in my blood that wants to squeeze, that wants to debate, that wants to fight. And I would find myself in the middle of conversations where I was having an argument with a person, and I'd think, I don't even give a shit about this. Like, why am I in this
Oh my God,
argument?
yes.
Like, I don't even give a shit. So when I realized like that, what that was, is that my first impulse was to put my dukes up and to question and to squeeze and to, do the 5 detective thing. Like, is this person real? What are their spots? All of that.
The big hormone enneagram.
Hi, it's John here. I'm a sexual self-pres 4-5-8 tri-type.
Hi, David here. I'm a self-pres sexual 9 with a 1, 9-7-4 tri-type.
Hey, it's Emeka. I'm an 8 wing 7 sexual type with the 8-5-4 tri.
Hey, it's Nancy. I'm a self-pres social 3, wing 4, and 3-6-9 tri-type.
Do you know I checked quarantinenudes.com and it's available?
What?
Oh,
really?
my God.
Yeah, I was like, some
You
pervert
should snag that.
hasn't snagged this already. We're going to be in quarantine for the next 2 years.
Please don't say that.
At least I think
Wait.
off and on, it's going to be a thing.
Yeah, I
for,
think
for
so,
a
too.
while.
It's not going to be straight, but it's going to be
Yeah,
waves.
This is basically a sexual 8 call.
pretty much.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean-
we've got a couple other people on here, though.
Yeah. But I mean,
We're here to provide contrast and questions about
And
You just
curiosity.
want to watch it. You just want to watch it go down. Like that's all.
they're just here for a party. That's what they're here for.
we're just hoping
For-
that there's a lot of pickles and
And dancing. And costume changes.
Inappropriate comments.
Can we turn on our video, please?
No.
Just Sienna, actually. Just Sienna.
Yeah, just Sienna, actually.
I don't
Yeah,
feel
right.
comfortable doing that.
Aw.
All right, so I'm Paula, and I am an 8 with a 9 wing and sexual self-pres.
Well, I'm Sienna, and I'm an 8 with a 7, sexual social, and my tri-type is 872. You can find me on my Friday dance party on Instagram. It's Sienna Liz, 1 N in my name.
And I just add to anybody listening that Sienna is one of my oldest, closest friends. So it's cool that she's on the pod with us.
And Paula, where can we find you if you want people to find you?
You can find me. I have a website, which is called Peach Therapy, peachtherapy.com.
Nice.
Welcome to Big Hormone Enneagram. What we've been doing is taking deeper dives into the specific types and trying to get into the meat of them. And we recently had calls on 9s, 6s, 4s, 5s, 3s, and now we got a couple of a trinity of 8s here to help us out, all sexual 8s. We started out this sort of series looking at what are called attachment types around the triangle, 6, 9, and 3. And I think because they tend to be the most misunderstood types on the Enneagram, and often kind of they're often sort of trivialized or not given their due respect or appreciation, and also because a lot of people are those types, and because of the psychological dynamic that is the attachment object relation, sometimes it can be hard for those people to clearly see their type in action. And sometimes the types on the hexad 1, 4, 2, 8, 5, 7 have an easier time seeing their type in action due to just different psychological dynamics. And so part of what we've been looking at is not just talk about your type and what it's like being your type, but also getting really into the guts and sort of deeper reactions. So on the making 9 great again calls, we talked a lot about what it is like to be a body type from the 9 point of view and how sensitive 9s are. And, as I said earlier, I've been close with Siena for a long time, and knowing Siena has changed my view of 8s a great deal from how the stereotype is often taught and communicated, showing how deeply sensitive 8s are, or where that energy that 8s are known for comes from, but also how, in my view, a lot of times the 8 gets a lot of projection from other people who are not 8s, and especially what I would consider like a projection of an ego ideal. I remember one time, because I love online arguments and in-person arguments, I was on an online argument with somebody about 8s, and they said something like, "8s don't feel fear."
Oh my God.
I just and I remember being like, "This is asshole," because on one hand, there's this sort of way that 8s are not seen as human sometimes by people that don't know 8s well, and you'll see when somebody is inviting that projection where they're like, "Yeah, I'm like a tough badass, whatever." And there's this flat one-dimensional way of acting, like just total competency, never fear, and always knowing what direction to go in or what choice I'm going to make, and being super decisive. And there's a decisive element to 8s for sure.
I would really like to talk about that word at some point.
Yeah, definitely. But I also want to say that, 8s experience all that shit, everything human, 8s experience. And part of what I think is important about what the collection of personalities on this call can help bring forward is the soulfulness and sensitivity and heart of 8. How 8 is like really what the struggle of 8 is, that it's not just, for 8s listening, it's not just you just need to be vulnerable, like, oh, all your problems will be solved if you're more vulnerable.
Stupid.
It's stupid, and it doesn't get at the heart of what the 8's conflict and struggle really is, and what vulnerability even means. And like, if it was so simple, an 8 would just get fucking vulnerable. So yeah. So anyway, there's a lot in there, but I really feel like this is about establishing more about the soul of 8, and we can talk about what fucking ever. But I feel like that will be a kind of a core. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense, and I really appreciate that thing you just said. It's a really nice way to get into it. It's great.
It's a bit of a conundrum to me, the whole idea of like that assertive 8 energy that's really aggressive and really angry and really like not feeling and not empathic. Because it's like I've never related to that in my life at all. And in terms of being soulful, even though I didn't know the Enneagram until way later in life, just since the time that I was a kid, I just had this sense of who I was, and that whatever it is that I ended up doing, I wanted to make an impact. It's sort of like gone through my whole life, and it's come out through my 8, sometimes not in a good way. As I get older, I think I'm getting wiser and learning how to deal with the impact of that energy. But while I say that, as opposed to just the strength, it's a really powerful internal, in my body, energy that I can only compare with like a cruise ship energy. And I always thought something was just wrong with me until I found out, being a female sexual 8 is like 3 strikes against you. But the body experience of being an 8 and learning, especially without tools, to contain this, I saw myself as Beauty and the Beast. And so there was so much that I needed to contain. And I think I did contain, and I think like over the years, it really wasn't good for me, because until I learned the instincts and then figured out what the sexual piece was, that was the first time, and that was at Russ's, I don't know, 7 years ago or whatever, first time that the whole in the instinctive workshop, he did the sexual piece. And I had such an intense reaction to it. And it was an intense reaction of shame. You know, then when we got up in the lineup that you do at the end and you get up there with all the sexuals and stuff, all I felt like doing was like punching the person next to me and shoving the person on the other side. And it was all this physical energy. And but I didn't want to say anything because it just sounded like typical AIDS stuff. But and I remember going back to my hotel room and calling Gail, and all of a sudden it was like, that's what it is. That's what it's always been.
I'm curious about this cruise ship energy that you said. What is that?
It is with my body and experiencing everything in my body. So if I'm in torment, I'm not just thinking, oh, I want to go kill myself. It's not in my head, it's in my body. So it might express itself as like, I have to bend over in pain, but I know it's emotional. I know it's not something wrong with my body. But on a 24/7 basis, I can feel my whole body throbbing. I mean, I don't know if that's the right word to use, but
I think
it's like a constant underground woo, and it's always there, and it's in my whole body. And that's been something that is with the sexual piece and learning, like, that is sexual energy. But I think the way it manifests in me is this containment. You know, I've contained it. I have the 9 wings, so there's always that internal jihad of my 8 wants to fight and my 9 wants peace.
Is the cruise ship analogy then that you're just continually breaking through the ocean? I mean, it's just on a steady path forward. It's not going to stop. Is that what you mean by cruise ship?
Well, and maybe cruise ship is a bad analogy. It
Sounds
not
like you're the
forcing
container,
me to move.
kind of.
Yes, I'm the container, and the energy is expansive. So the way it feels is like, it's like that whole thing where, you know, you have this low vibration, but given a certain trigger, it can expand and expand and expand. You know, it feels like you're ripping out of your clothes because you're getting big internally.
Right.
And, you know, especially at my stage of life, it's exhausting to fight that beast in the basement.
That's really good. I like that image of that you're the container, and then there's this energy that is always expanding and could explode, possibly.
Yes.
One of the things you're really beautifully illustrating is the way in which the body is the focal point of like all the different emotions and the way that you process things. And you know, we talked a lot in 9 about how the way impressions register on a body level, and how for the 9, because their boundaries are open, they get overwhelmed very easily by themselves. They're sensitive, and the point where they have to numb themselves. But with the 8, you know, what can be confusing or unclear for people that are in relationship with 8s, it's like, you know, what people tend to see on the outside from 8s is a kind of it's kind of a confidence, but it's not like I'm confident, but it's like when there's a reaction, there seems to be little doubt, or there's like an absence of what people would normally check themselves in terms of expressing themselves. So you were speaking earlier about this sort of free expression versus containment. You know, I think that there's something legit with 8s having a lot of energy and needing to learn how to creatively contain in some way, or creatively find outlets of creative expression for all that energy that's not just hurting people and destructive. And so, like, where do you find not a middle ground, but an actual creative channel for that kind of energy that's not just self-containment, and it's not just like letting it all fly? You know what I'm trying to ask?
Yes. Well, like all of the 8s that have said so far, is that I have a lot of energy, and I've always had a lot of energy. Because also there's like this need to kind of get the middle of everything. You should watch me eat sometimes. Like, I just if something tastes good or something feels good, or if someone is expressing something that I feel like they need to express, I want to go to the center of it. You know?
No, I mean, you shouldn't watch Siena eat. You should watch her sleep. I don't know. I don't know if you remember Siena, but like, remember watching like Seventh Seal and you fell asleep, and then I imitated it for you.
Yes. That was like in my early 20s. I didn't know how to manage my energy at all, and so I was just going hard, real hard.
We're watching this like kind of, you know, like it's one of my favorite movies, but it's like kind of you know, long, and it's made in the 1950s or 60s or something, and we're like sitting on bed watching this movie, and then Sienna falls asleep, and it's like the most intense large gestures to just turn around, or like, you know, like her mouth is totally open breathing, like, you know, it was just like so fun. It was just like she was just as active asleep as she was awake.
I'm not sure if I was completely asleep. I think I was trying to fight to like come join, you know. Like, that was me participating.
Fighting while sleeping. There's
exactly right.
Yeah. So yes, this need to be like in the middle of things, and then so this energy. And now I actually have a thing on my mirror right now that I wrote the other day that is like reminding myself that when I move, like physically move, exercise, like pretty intensely, doesn't have to be anything structured, but because I am a mover and that's my profession, just getting it out, like getting it all out, I'm a much kinder, more balanced person. I'm able to organize my feelings and my thought. I'm actually able to come back to my body, because I know, Paula, you were saying that you feel things in your body. I'm always out. I'm experiencing all these things and my body needs to catch up. I'm doing things and I don't always know how it's affecting my body.
Some of that is self-pres last, right? Probably.
Yeah, self-pres last. And
I don't know if that's just self-pres last, because I was going to echo a little bit of what you're saying, where I think with the 7 wing that I just feel like my motor is just going much faster than I can keep up with in terms of what my awareness of what my body's doing. And so like some kind of physical practice where I can slow down and kind of get in there and like what you're saying, like catching up. I feel like I'm always way ahead of myself on the go. It feels like a constant motor internally.
Yeah. And I think that this word that you were saying earlier of 8s being decisive, I don't think that's always true. I think that we are action oriented, that I will move, I will do an action before I've decided what I actually want.
Yeah.
Know that something needs to happen. And so I was looking over some of the literature today, and that word really struck me a lot, decisive. I think there are other people in my life who are much more decisive than me. A lot of times, you know, I maybe don't want people to know that I'm doing this, but very often I'm like, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? The idea isn't coming from nowhere. I'm constantly sort of engaging with other people and sort of testing if I think that this idea works, or I'm not just being like, we're going this way. I'm like, what do you think? All right. And then I'm sort of moving around. Like, it takes me a while to actually make a decision. I'm actually quite bad at making decisions.
Yeah.
In the grocery store, it takes me so long to choose what coffee. Like, I'm not like, I will take this coffee.
Right.
No, it takes me a long time, but I might pick something up just because I'm like, I need to do something. I'll pick it up.
The style feels decisive. It's not necessarily decisive. I mean, like our
action.
Yeah, it's like our favorite president, Mr. Trump. You know, he's apparently deciding, but he's changing what he decided every single moment almost, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes you make a decision or you take an action to figure out what you really wanted. That's a lot of times I just got to do something, and then we'll see what happens, and I can quickly go do something else.
Yeah, I was going to say decisive often is kind of framed in a head center way, where like you think about it and you do it, but in the 8 way that's in the body center. So what I've heard 8 say is when they want to make a decision, they feel it in their body. But they also have to use their body to get to that decision. So there's a lot more movement. So it can look like quick decisions, but it's not.
If I'm making a decision, I'm deciding like what do I want to do? I need to stop. I have to stop moving. I have to stop doing things. And it's much easier for me to do that if I have exhausted myself during the day, so I can come back to my body, and if I've meditated. So I have both those things together.
I mean, this kind of goes to Paula's point before when she was talking about like expression versus containment, right? Like there's like I'm sure as eights, you're conditioned from early in life to see yourself as making a lot of impulse self-expression, and because that's like, you know, turning things into action right away. And then like I think when eights are under a lot of stress, what ends up happening is that mechanism of taking impulses and feelings and turning them into action becomes compulsive, and it becomes sort of out of the hands of the eight's own decision making in a certain way, kind of like seven, but there's a way in which I think sometimes eights feel taken along for their own ride. Does that resonate?
Yes,
oh, yeah.
100%. All this recent COVID stuff is kind of giving me some insight on how I deal with stress, because it's kind of a weird thing to talk about for me, because I know I do get stressed, but it's hard for me to get in touch with my own internal process of dealing with stress. And I've noticed, just, you know, because there's all this downtime and we don't have shit to do, is that I just start doing more stuff. Like I can say, oh, I have this stressful thing that I need to think about and make a decision on. And then I will avoid doing that thing and fill up the day with a gazillion other things that, you know, that are just happening automatically. And like 8 hours go by and I've just done a bunch of shit automatically, and I'm still like sort of avoiding this whatever uncomfortable, stressful thing that I don't want to do. And so with all this COVID stuff, it tends to be for me that I'll just kind of hole away and just be doing shit. You know, maybe it's bouncing off of this person, you know, causing a ruckus in this chat, or just like entertaining myself, but it feels like I'm going forward. But when I'm stressed out, I've noticed that I kind of replace it with more action. I dissociate with just more and more action.
I can't tell you how many times I've flipped on Emeka's Instagram and he's dancing with pickles in his room and shaking outfit. I like what you're saying, Emeka, about dissociation, because something that I think that you and I have talked about that you seem to resonate with is that you could say lust, the passion of eight or whatever, the defense mechanisms of eight is essentially dissociation, just the same way nine's sloth is dissociation, but it's a different style of it.
You know, after a period of time, you or I think have built up some remorse for the times when, I mean, not when I intentionally tried to hurt somebody, but for those times that you were talking about when it gets away from us and we become blamers and disconnected. And I think that remorse, which I see as part of my healing journey or my healing process, feeling that remorse reminds me of the importance of like just being still and being able to sit with something. And like Emeka said, until it feels right in my body, I will ponder and really just ponder, because of, you know, having so many times when I went in this direction, I went in that direction just to appease my lustful appetite, you know, is always when I got in trouble. So, you know, learning to just sit and ponder, and then all of a sudden my body moves and I know what the decision is, has been something that I've more evolved into in my old age.
I mean, the way y'all are speaking, like I am a pathetic 4 with a 5 wing, but I have an 8 fix, and like I don't know, like you're giving voice to a certain way that I see that when an impulse makes its way through the labyrinth of my psyche and gets down into my body, and I want to do. It's sort of shedding light on how I've sort of used my own energy to discharge or push or turn things into action in a way that sometimes I don't even. I'm going along with some impulse, and so it's really interesting because it seems like it is it's a way of not having a handle on in a kind of Gurdjieffian speak what's going on in my centers.
Yeah, well, if you also think about the way you dance, John, like that is definitely connected to your 8. You're not thinking when you're, and also how you drive as well.
How does John drive?
Oh God, I can't imagine.
Slow.
Do I want to go there?
Yes.
Signal every time I turn, and I check all my mirrors.
He is a very aggressive driver. He is constantly making decisions before I understand why he just turned there, and is very vocal towards people who are making other decisions that aren't what he wanted them to do.
That might be just from New York.
No, this wasn't
Siena's
in New
known me
York.
since pre-New York.
Oh,
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
No, I can see John's aggression. He's
Yeah, no, and it's great, but not when he's driving necessarily. But
Any other time.
Yeah.
So I have a question from my sister, because before she was the one actually who she demanded that we do 8 soon. And so I asked
had
her,
no choice.
Yeah. I said I asked her if there were any questions that she wanted us to cover, and she said she wanted to ask the women how you navigate balancing cultural feminine expectations with the 8's tendency to come off as aggressive or abrasive. And then there's a part 2, and how you deal with female friendships, because he says that female interactions in general, there's a lot of cultural expectations, and the perceived judgment around what she's talking about tends to come from other women. So she wants to know how you guys have navigated that.
Well, I know for me, being an 8 and I'm in a different generation too, but having that sexual energy, being an 8, not necessarily a ball buster, but just having a certain solid presence. I think socially, it goes back to, John talking about the containment versus the expression. At least where I am, it feels to me like a lot like I have a lot of masculine energy.
Yes.
So you might not look at me and think, oh, she looks like a man, or she's really pumped or whatever. But I know the energy inside me is, I don't know, it just has this strong male force to it. And so I think within the Enneagram world, I used to talk about 8 hate. I thought there was a real bias against 8. And I'm feeling like that's softening because people are getting educated, but it still socially has been tied into, let's face it, like everybody hates a powerful woman.
Mm-hmm.
And, whether you look at it in the media, I mean, there's different kinds of power, but we are still, just like we're a racist and a sexist and a country full of like crazy people, for instance, like all the gun stores being sold out right now and all the ammunition. It's been something that I have just tried to soften and worked on softening it. And I think like my job as being a therapist, I've always been an empathic person. So I've never like deliberately, gone after or been aggressive with anyone. But I think being a woman and being an 8, I think it's better now. And it's just being a powerful presence. You don't have to go in and do some kind of whopper speech. You just walk into the room and you have a powerful presence, and that's threatening until you soften the crowd, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know what you mean. What about you, Siena?
Well, I appreciate her question about women friends. I will wonder if I have a unique experience, but I have a lot of female friends, and I've got like several different communities of women friends. And I think that I'm a very open person, and I'm extremely communicative. I'm not always agree. Like I will challenge you. That for me, it's like, if you want to be a good friend of mine, that's
how it's going to go.
That's it. Like I have my group of friends. I have my people, as I say it. And it's not something that I decided, like I need my people, but I'm just noticing like the only people around me are people who I've gotten in with many arguments, and we've gone through a lot of different things, and we know each other well because we like did the work. I think that communication now, when I get upset, I shut down real fast. And I'm getting much better at communicating to people like, this is what's happening. And they know to like, just leave me alone. Just leave me alone. I'll find my way out, and then I'll come to you and we could talk about it. But like, don't come up to me when I look like all this stuff is stirring inside me. Don't do it. You're gonna get hurt. I'm gonna say something.
Just it's so true.
Protect yourself. My father is also an 8.
True.
And he's an 8 with a 7, social sexual. And I live in Spain, but right now I'm in my parents' house in Detroit. So a lot of stuff coming.
Very familiar with that one. My dad's an 8 as well, so I can't imagine.
Oh, shit. Yeah, we both know the Enneagram. He's a therapist, like, so we have conversations. I'm trying. We're gonna get there. But so like,
it's interesting that we all have fathers who are or were 8.
And my father's father was an 8 as well.
I have seen that too with a couple other families where there's like 3 generations of male 8s, for example.
I will say that almost all of my female friends are 8s because
that's interesting.
Yeah, because I always know where you guys stand. Like, there's never a question. It's so appreciated because women cannot handle that shit.
Yeah.
A lot of times, like
you have to help them. That's all. You have to help them.
Yeah, but I don't want to. So, so I really appreciate the 8s in my life because you guys always will let me know what's up.
I'll say that I don't remember. I think you and I hit it off real fast, Siena. But we met when we were teenagers, and I remember like Siena was just very easy to connect with, and my experience is like, as I've gotten older, done more inner work, it's become easier for me to like be in my body and be more immediate, which I think immediacy is a pretty 8 kind of quality. But one of the things that made it easy for me being super schizoidy with Ronnie and hanging out with Siena was that I didn't feel rushed with Siena. Like, I think that's one of the things that can be difficult for people that are a little bit more withdrawn or introverted or whatever with 8s, is that quick physical quality, putting things into action really quickly, also happens in communication. And it took me a while to be able to find that immediate place in my own body and self. And so, when I'm struggling with an 8, I go back to that kind of more immediate physical place in myself. But when that's not your default, that can be kind of difficult. And so I was wondering, when it comes to interaction, like what helps you feel at ease, and what helps I'll sense in myself that sometimes I sense like blood in the water or like weakness or something, and I'll kind of want to provoke that. And I think it's probably similar for 8s. And I have to remind myself to not go there. Or like I feel like somebody's going off balance or something, and I have to like not try to push them.
It?
Yeah, come over.
And at the same time, so like there's that quality, but there's also like what you're really wanting there is somebody to actually be authentic.
Yeah.
And so how do you like sometimes I find that in my own interactions, I kind of have to in a certain way help people get there if I want to if there's a need for extended conversation and not just fucking bouncing. Like, how do you guys is there a way that you find that balance with people, and like is that a struggle not to kind of provoke, or what?
I would say online it's probably a little bit more difficult because I feel like a big part of my own process in sort of skillfully fucking with people, but not like, going overboard, is just having a body-to-body sense. And I think part of the sexual drive is that whole chemistry co-creative thing is that you can really hook up with someone and you can hook up with their physical arousal patterns. And when someone is in a room, you can, even just a room in general, you can have a sense in your body of how someone is reacting to you and if you're being too much. But online,
that's a big one.
Yeah, like you can feel it. You can
too much.
Whereas online, it's a little bit different, where you can't necessarily read those kind of patterns, and you can end up making some comments that can just run people over. So that's my experience.
Yeah, mine is I just can pick up in my body whoever I'm with, sort of where they are, how they're responding to me, what question or what topic is engaging to them, where do I lose them. It seems like all of those nonverbal things going on are just glaring for me. So it's almost like I hate it on some level. I mean, it's worked for me professionally, but I hate it because I just pick all that up, and I don't always want to pick it all up. But it would be the way that I would seek to engage with somebody, would always be to first try to find what ground they're on and then to meet them on their own ground.
In some ways, that sounds like a 9-wing sort of fighting with 8 in some sense.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I think you're right, David.
Body absorbing other people's tone, vibe, etc.
Right, feeling some responsibility to steer it.
Yeah, can y'all say more about, like, Paul, you just used the word finding somebody's ground, but I'm, as image type, and in contrasting with other calls, like, what I think was really rich and fascinating with the 9s, for example, was like the sort of detail of body-based impression, and versus myself as an image type and how I register things through the heart center. I was wondering if you could speak to like how things register in the body. And, for when we talked about the 9s, things go very deeply into the body and almost get stuck in there. And they have to dissociate to kind of find themselves apart from what's coming in through the body. And so is that like, what's similar, different about that? And is it like things come in and turn into action so quickly that they don't penetrate, or how's it?
For me, it's interesting that both of you, Emeka and Paula, you've both talked a lot about your body's experience with this, and like for me, I do a lot of thinking, very, very quick thinking, and I don't necessarily know how it's affecting my body. It's like a bunch of information is going in, and I'm making a lot of analysis in a very, very short amount of time, and then I'm doing something about it. And so I have to like make myself stay with my body and be like, before I react, because as soon as I get information, I'm like, okay, I know what I'm going to do. And I'm doing something. But if I take it time to like, where is this sitting in my body? Do I fear something for this person? Am I like bored? Am I anxious? Like where is this sitting? But I have to stop thinking.
But in some sense, you're talking about immediately launching into doing, right? So you are.
But it's from a thinking place. It's not from my body wants to do this. It's like it's a lot of quick. I guess maybe it is body thinking. I don't know, but I don't relate so much to like having a sensation in my body.
I think I can bridge the gap there a little bit, because I do relate to what you're saying, because as an 8/7 wing, there's a lot of thinking going on, but I feel like I'm doing a lot of figuring out or strategizing, I would say, based on, let's say I'm watching someone. I can watch someone and feel in my body like what it feels like that they're feeling. But that kind of shows up as like, in my mind, like she's not having a good time or she's annoyed, or but I know where it's coming from. It's that I can scan a room, and I'm getting a body impression of what this person's at, like what this guy wants to go talk to that girl, or that girl is attracted to this guy, and there's sort of a maze in my head of all these things are happening.
It's in your head. That's what I mean. It's like it's that you're watching it happen, and then you do something about it. I don't feel it go to. maybe it goes to a place in my body, but I'm thinking about like what's happening, how is this person reacting, like how is this affecting the other person, how is it affecting the people that we're sitting with here, like why is maybe she doing that? And then I'm like, well, what needs to happen? Does something need to happen? No, I can just watch this or whatever.
It's more that the sense is coming from a physical sense. Like you're scanning the room and you kind of
I don't
at least for me
experience that.
The cues from the thoughts, you mean? The cues are physical, then it's just the
like,
mind going?
Like it's the gap between what you sense physically and what you're thinking. There's not really much of a gap, but I know that there are people that will scan the room, like my friend's a head type, and he can see that things are happening, but it doesn't really have the grounding of feeling where things are in your body. So it's like, I know that it's a lot of thoughts and strategizing, but I also know that it's coming from a place where there's a gut sense of what's going on here. Like I kind
of different. Having a gut sense about something and actually feeling it in your body are two different things.
I feel like they're the same thing.
I don't.
Well, I don't have any of that shit going on in my head. I mean, that sounds painful on top of everything else we have to deal with.
Well,
to do the head
because
I was just going to say maybe it's the 7 wing, but yeah. I don't. It's more like, for me, my body can change so fast, can morph. And so internally, it's more the gauge of, am I okay? Or if I'm not okay, it's turning up somewhere in my body. So it could be that all of a sudden my feet feel tingly, or I can feel a pain in a certain part of my body. But it's more the other way. It's more like, because it's in my body, it's like I can't get away from it, and I can't get out of it. So it's like, what is this? And then I have to do the thinking part of it. Like, what is this and what are practical steps?
So, Paula, when you're working with clients, are you able to kind of know where they're at empathically? Or like, are you able to feel them out? Is that something, because since you are in that kind of line of work, a lot of people feel that when they're in that line of work, they can kind of gauge where people are at well.
Oh, yeah. Like, I think I can do that. And now with the Enneagram, I can do it even more speedily. I think that part of the way that I do it, or the way that I see it, is like, a person comes in for the first time and I see him as kind of forest. So my first job as a professional is to get inside that forest where they are, and then look around and together walk out with them. So that, metaphorically, what that can look like is, I can be in my chair laughing my ass off. I can be crying my eyes out with somebody who is suffering. And then on the other hand, there have been a couple times where I've probably gone over the ethical line because and it's probably the protection thing, like when there's been people in my house, in my office, and I feel like they're getting bullied. There have been a couple times where I like almost went over my ottoman to strangle them. And so, there are times when I do get really pissed off, and I think I have to really get a grip on this, because I'm just going to scream at this person in the next session.
So one thing that I've always loved about 8s is how empathic they are, but it always seems like they aren't very empathic with themselves. Like, they know what's going on in a whole room. They could be like, oh, this person just went through a breakup. This person is like having the best day of their life, but then they have no idea what's going on inside.
It's part of being a body type is self-negating. If 9 is sort of the center of the body, on one level, 8 and 1 are iterations of 9, right? And 8s are 8s are, well, dropping their basic vulnerability often, and negating themselves that way, and moving into force and action, and sort of not checking in with their heart or all the time, or their softer emotions.
It's been interesting with all this stuff happening, talking to some of my family members, and my mom's been calling pretty often. And last time she called and we were done talking, and she was like, "So how are you doing?" And it just caught me. I mean, whenever she asks me that kind of stuff, or anyone asks me that kind of stuff, it always catches me off guard. It's like, why are you asking me how I'm doing?
Same with me as a 9. I don't know what to do with that question.
I'm like, I'm fine. What are you talking about?
Yeah, what's the right answer?
But are you always fine, or like what? I don't get that.
Got to give up your emotional location, guys.
Well, I mean, in this case, I was fine. I mean, she's asked me if I was okay before. I guess in this case, I was like, why are you asking me that? I haven't told you that I'm sick. I haven't, you're the one that probably has an issue. And then I started thinking maybe she wanted me to ask her how she was doing or whatever. I was just strategizing in my mind why she asked me.
Yeah, maybe just double checking about you.
Yeah, she's probably just double checking.
And I'm like, why are you like? I'm okay. If I had a problem, I'd let you know. I mean, so I've noticed that.
Would you though? Would you let her know if you had a problem, like an emotional?
Well, it's more of a, do I want to involve you with my problem? And in the case of, I did get COVID. Yeah, when people just sort of shoot that out there, I'm always trying to figure out, like, what are you trying to get at here? Like, are you trying to get something from me? Or do you, like, why are you asking me that?
Well, what about if they just care about you?
Right. Well, so so what you said was, if they can't help me with it, I'm not going to bother them with it. Is that something that resonates with you, Siena and Paula? That there has to be, like, for you to contribute to my problem, you have to be able to fix it or help.
Well, I was just going to say, there's that whole rock thing about acting like you're the rock and people just sort of picking it up, whether you articulate it or not. They just kind of pick up that you are a rock, because we don't like to ask for help. And we do just say, I'm okay, when we can be really suffering inside.
That's part of where I was going, was the part of the self-negation is protection, that you take on the role of protecting other people, which is a self-negation, partly.
Yes. It's not just being the rock. It's sort of like there's been that distortion, that thought distortion that I'm bad, and I think 8s have some of that on that emotional level, or the cognitive distortion that I'm bad, meaning it's not like I'm flawed, but it's more like deep down inside, at the end of the day, I'm bad and nobody has your back and you're going to die alone, and that whole nihilism thing. But it's been a lifetime sort of belief system that no one has your back.
Yeah.
So for me, the learning curve really has been like, that's not true. Like, the universe does have my back. And so things like that, I've had to really work consistently on dispelling in myself, or the badness can come out in a way like, okay, I want to keep making an impact, and the day I can't make an impact anymore, I want to just die.
For me, it's a lot of avoiding pain. And so I don't want to think about it. I don't mind talking about someone else's pain. I'd love to get into that and like work it out, and I'm really curious about that. But my own pain, I'm not that curious about it. I just want it to go away. And so when I'm able to locate where it is, it ends up a lot of times being a big release of usually tears, because I've just been holding it in for so long, whether it's like pain of boredom or pain of stress. And so it's just, I do a lot of avoiding it. And I also just assume nobody can help me with it. And I don't want to know what they think about it. I want them to leave me alone. I want to be left alone most of the time when I'm experiencing something unpleasant. And then I'll come to you and be like, can we talk about this? Or I get pushed enough where I'll open up about it if you ask the right question. And it's usually quite clear of, like, from the outside, that something is wrong. There are other times where I think I'm just being so, like, that it's not obvious that I'm really hurt. And watching my dad, it's hilarious, because it's like, I know your feelings got so hurt right now. That's why you're yelling at me. You're yelling at me because I hurt you. And you go straight to anger, and you don't realize that right one layer underneath, just one tiny layer underneath, you've got your feelings hurt. And if you were able to just like take a 10-second breath, you'd realize, you know, you just hurt my feelings. And if he told me that I hurt his feelings, I'd be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like, what happened? Like, what did I do? But instead, he goes, Siena, you're being disrespectful. You're being like, you're super selfish. And I'm like, fuck you. Oh, can I say that?
Sorry. You can say that.
Okay.
No, we curse on here. Go ahead.
Yeah, we curse a lot.
Okay. Yeah, and so now I'm just like, fuck you. You know, it's like we were just going from this level of like we're both trying to protect ourselves while challenging each other at the same time. Where I'm like, you know, what you are is your feelings are hurt, but you're too like stubborn or too like of an idiot to realize that that's what's happening to you. So I'm going to keep poking you until you realize it. And then he's like, back off. You're being like aggressive and vindictive. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm just calling out what's the truth.
I've literally seen you two do that to each other, where it's like, you're actually hurt right now. You're actually, you know, like, you got your feelings hurt. Just admit it. No, you're being disrespectful. That whole thing.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's really just like two wounded birds, just like trying so hard to just like recuperate the arm while like taking down the other one. That's just like.
Yeah, I get into some heated arguments with my sister, and maybe eventually one of us will strike a nerve, and then the other person just like goes berserk, and then we don't talk to each other for a little bit.
Yeah, but there's sorry, I just want to like just to go back to just the pain thing. It's like sometimes it feels like I don't have space to feel things.
Yes.
And that I'm allowed to ask for space. I'm allowed to say, hey, please leave me alone. It's just like for how good I am at communicating, I'm really bad at communicating how I feel. But I know it's like I'm so close to it. I'm so close to the feeling. It's just that I need to just say what I need, and that like that's going to be accepted more times than not. But I think that my need being said and then it's rejected is like so embedded in my behavior that I don't even realize I have that option.
You don't experience space from other people or inside yourself.
That I'm allowed to ask for it.
My experience of like if I have a problem, my first thought is this is something I just need to figure out and handle myself. And then the second thought is, why on earth would I put this on anybody else? Like when I did get sick, I was like, I'll talk about this after it's done. Like I'm not gonna stress anybody out and be like, yo, like I've got a really bad fever and I can barely walk to the bathroom kind of thing. Why the fuck would I say that? But then recently I believe my mother got COVID, and I remember feeling the same thing, like, oh, I'm gonna tell everyone after this is done. I don't want anyone to be stressed out by knowing that any of my family members might get this shit. But then I was like, that's fucking stupid. Like it would be helpful for them to know. And exactly like saying it would be helpful for them to know this is I'm like trying to make this useful for everyone, but it's just sort of, you should tell people what's going on. And so I had this internal dialogue with myself, like, this is kind of ridiculous. You should just tell people that this is going on. Instead of like trying to help or trying to figure out what would be useful or not stressful for other people.
Oh yeah, there's just so much. There's so much like determining what's going to be received well. I feel like it's kind of yes and no, because also I think we have a tendency of not being able to understand our own impact. There's like this dance that happens forever.
Yeah,
which is like not realizing that you just entering a room has an impact. Because you decided to go in there for a reason, and so that is going to permeate in the room. And I think that like my father, for example, has no clue of that. No clue. Now it's a different tangent, I know.
But. We're also the people that walk into a room and end up being the ones that say the emperor is naked. You know, and everybody's like freaking out, and we're just like, I'm just saying, you know, like he's fucking naked. But
you mean you're
like, you're
speaking
not
the truth
to say that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, you know the idea of the story of the emperor being naked and everybody
I don't
being
know that story.
Oh, I'm sorry that I'm showing my.
Seriously?
That's hilarious.
I have no idea what's happening.
You don't know that story?
In 3 sentences.
I thought she just came up with that.
By the way, Nancy is 12 years old, and she's just very precocious, and so we wanted her to be on the pod.
No, I am 24, but I'm
a good word.
still very young.
I forget how young you are.
Yeah, I'm much younger than everyone on this call. Yes,
Yeah.
I'm aware. Continue.
Well, but you know what it means in the sense that, like, when we just say something because we're being real, like,
Right.
hey, that
does
wall
make
is
sense,
purple, and people respond like, okay,
Why would you
like
say
you're
that?
not supposed to say that,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and that's a little confusing because we're just like,
See, I don't experience that. I don't experience that because there's 2 ways to do it. There's like, you can say it how you want to say it and expect people to get it, or you can say it in a way that people are gonna get it. And that's something that the Enneagram has really helped me with, is like, people think and receive things differently. So it's like, do you want to just say it the way you want to say it and people have to deal, or do you want to say it and have people hear it? And so it's like, you can call the wall purple, but you can do a little bit of a dance to get people on your side, so you can call the wall out, as opposed to
Is that social?
Being like, listen.
You think?
What?
Is that social? You think?
No, I think it's a lot of working on being an 8. I think it's just like work. I don't want to stay like this all the time. I want to be dynamic. I want to be able to able to communicate with everybody.
It's possible that it occurs to you that you need to do that because of having social in your stacking and type 2, that you need to find some way to make this, that it'll land in a way that's, received, as opposed to just being
maybe. But see, at this point, like at this where I am now, is like, I don't need to tell you the wall is purple. I like watching people just like, maybe I'll tell the person next to me, but I don't need to tell the whole room. Like, I don't need to do that.
Mm-hmm. I get what you're saying, because I definitely feel like as my awareness of my own 8ness has grown over the years, I've recognized that I never need to make any effort to push, and that there are other options, and I can pause.
Yeah, I like that I can decide, because I like to like rumble up a room, like that can be really fun, and other people can enjoy it too, and some people never. But yeah, I just like that. I like to be able to make the choice if I want to do that, instead of just like, this is what I do.
Yeah, I feel that.
Yes. Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I just want to clarify rejection. So 2, 5, and 8 are rejection types, and they all handle it differently. But what it means is that, and some early part of life, and I suspect that this is just how it is. It's like how somebody comes into life. Like, I think you're born with your type, but anyway, a rejection type is prone to feeling that their own needs were not somehow acceptable, that their needs were somehow rejected. And so, in place of, in a sense, being themselves, and it's sort of sloppy language, but there's a way that, as a rejection type, it's like, I feel like I need to offer something. And Emeka, you said something about, is this going to be useful to anybody or not? There's a kind of, for 5, 8, and 2, there's a kind of framing things in those terms, that it's like, in order to show up and be with people, or to be connected or be relevant to other people, there has to be some kind of use. And so
preempting rejection.
Yes.
And it happens through the dominant, right. And it happens through the dominant center. So it's like, through the 5, it's offering the head. To the 2, it's offering heart, and through the 8, it's offering this body energy. Yep. And yeah, it's like 8s assume they're going to be rejected, and there's often a way that their natural forcefulness is almost enhanced by that, because it's like, I'm imagining that when I say that the emperor has no clothes, that people are going to react negatively in some level. So I'm going to go, it's not going to be like, the emperor has no clothes. It's like, emperor's got no clothes. Like, I'm putting it out there,
right?
Anticipating that they're going to resist it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've noticed that, just working on this, or doing this working on this podcast together with you guys, that even just promoting the podcast, I realized that this thing has to be framed in a way to get people to give a fuck, because I assume, why on earth would anyone give a fuck about anything I'm doing or anything that I'm involved in? So I have to present something that is so compelling that even if you don't like me, which I assume you don't, that you'll be interested. But I mean, then I realized that you can just be with people. You can just be like, like just throw it out there and not like have to make it useful all the time. So I end up finding myself like I can't share with people. I can't post anything unless I can present something that is all these things: interesting, compelling, just like fast. Just it has to be a Venn diagram of you can't resist. Like because I'm not. You wouldn't just want to connect with me on the basis of connecting with me as I am. I'd have to be able to give you something that you're getting from this.
Well, and you're also touching upon sexual instinct, and since
Emeka, I really relate to what you just said.
Yeah,
and since we're like we're getting in on time, which I don't give a fuck about time, but you got to edit, So
yeah, we gotta hit sexual.
Yeah, we got to hit the sexual instinct, and I don't know, like I don't have any specific question, but I just want to hear all your thoughts on your experience of being an 8 and a sexual type, and how that goes together, because a lot of times the stereotype I think that most people have of 8s is usually a social or a self-pres 8, whereas self-pres 8 is excessive in lifestyle and wealth, or maybe physically pushing themselves some way, or a social 8 is like holding court over a lot of people, or being the kind of troublemaker that gets everybody, galvanizing force in relationships. But for the sexual 8, there's something about holding the attention and being what Emeka is speaking to, kind of like exciting and juicy, not necessarily liked, but like holding something from a charged point of view.
Yeah, I think there's something seductive. There's something seductive in that, because especially being a body type and a sexual type, that's just an energy that you can really use. But the sexual, I think the sexual piece of it for me, as I'm getting older and getting more comfortable with it, I just think that the sexual part of the energy and it's such a creative, fabulous, energizing force that I feel really grateful for. The sexy, not sexy, but the whole lust thing. It's manifested in me with the whole, like, if a little bit of this is good, then a whole lot of it is even better. And the other thing, the last thing, then I'll shut up, like about the sexual thing, is that that energy just has an unending well to it. It's sort of like that joke about the guys in the boat with St. Peter, and he's saying, "Are you sure this is heaven?" And St. Peter says yes, and then he looks across the river, and this guy who's a real terrible person is in the other boat with a blonde and a bottle of champagne, and he says, "Well, I know that to St. Peter. I know that guy, and he doesn't deserve to be in heaven." And St. Peter says, "No, he's in hell. The bottle has a hole in it, the blonde doesn't." So there's
great.
So my point is like that I have found with the sexual energy that there isn't this ending culmination with an exhale. It doesn't stop. And even like sexually in the body in that way, it could go on and on and on and on and on. And it feels like, okay, well, if I didn't have some natural containment and a society to live in, it maybe could have gotten me really out of control at a certain time in my life.
I think it's like something about the sexual energy is like you're acting on your curiosity. And when I think about like my friendship with John, for example, like you were my first male friend, and I remember just like the way that we were able to just like sit in a room for hours talking about what the hell ever, and like just being able to like feed off one another based on this like curiosity, and there's, I guess, as far as like a sexual 8, it's like man, especially in the work that I'm doing, like doing physical theater and dancing, that when I'm able to let go of my brain and trust my body and being able to connect with whatever audience is there, like, wow, it's just like so electric and so like there's a language that's being spoken that's quite concrete, but there aren't actual words being spoken. I know that's very abstract sounding, but
nice.
It's very real. I don't know. It's very real. And then it's like being able to like latch on to a connection or latch on to an energy and stay there for a while. You know, I find it difficult when, especially like with a partner, if their first stacking isn't sexual. Ooh, I do a lot of work. You know, like I'm creating problems or creating things so that I can get that juice, you know?
Yes, yeah.
Like right now I have a partner in Chicago. So it's like a long distance thing. And he's a 9. I think he's a social first. I've never dated a 9. But like
welcome to the club.
Wow, it's crazy. But like yeah, I find myself doing that where things are chill, things are real chill, and I'm just like, we got to kick this up. This is not doing it for me. And so I'll just like, but it's interesting now that I have this awareness that I can watch myself doing this, and I'm like, what are you doing? You're having a pleasant time. You can relax. You don't need to create drama. You're like, there's no need for this. But I'm just I want more. And sometimes he's just like, what is happening? Like he doesn't know. He has no idea what's going on. And he just sort of like flips out. And so I'm having a conversation completely by myself.
Prognosis for this relationship does not sound very good.
No.
It's wonderful. It's the best relationship ever that I've been in. It's awesome. He's amazing. Watch it, David.
Okay. I'm gonna check back in.
No, I appreciate you, but no, you're wrong.
Okay.
Well, I feel like it's been a process for me in learning about my sexual instinct and what sexual 8 is. And it's really, I've had some experiences. Well, first I met Paula a couple of years ago, and that was the first sexual 8 that I met. And just kind of getting a real first-hand example, just meeting that energy, it really gave me some insight on myself. And meeting Paula felt like, from far away, a sexual 8 doesn't really seem like an 8. Like it doesn't necessarily have the same as forceful boundaries. It wasn't until like I met her up close that I felt this sort of steely, solid presence. But it was like she was meeting me on an energetic level, and so it helped me understand that my 8 energy was directed towards conducting or trying to steer this chemistry energy that whatever happens or is created whenever you hook up with someone. Like you just meet them and a new energy is created because, let's say me and Siena are having a conversation. There's a chemistry that you can label Emika and Siena. And there's only one kind of chemistry it's a unique thing. And so 8 energies, like you get really excited and you get, like that you have this new chemistry and you want to do things to it. You want to have this creative interestingness that's coming, like new things are being born from this new energy. So it's like, it seems like my personality is geared around creating these new, interesting, alluring sort of hooks that, just trying to be aware that this is what I'm constantly doing. Like I'm not realizing that I'm just constantly creating from chemistry, creating interesting things. And so people can end up feeling like in romantic situations, like just really getting swept off their feet in a sense that you can sort of just take over and create this. It's almost like an entertainment system of, here's an interesting thing. Here's an interesting thing. And then we can go deeper into that and we just dive in. And then here's another interesting thing. We can go deep into that. And before you know it, like you guys are just like swirling in each other. And they end up feeling like what the fuck is happening? How am I close to this person? Do I want this? And you don't even know if you want it because it's sort of like an automatic chemistry thing that you're doing. I wanted to tell a story, but I don't know if we have enough time, but it's a really good story.
I have a question.
Yes.
Do you find that, like, have you been in relationships where, like, all of what you just said, you do that? And so it's almost like, do you feel like later you realize that you brought this person to your level, like eye level, and as soon as you let go of the energy, they were gone because you actually brought them up to like where you are?
Yes,
have you experienced
it
that?
happens all the time, and this is a recurring pattern. Like, you meet someone and you sort of create the chemistry for both of you.
Well, it's like you just give them all the energy that you could possibly have.
Yeah.
Because you're interested, and so that's exciting to them, and then they come up with you, and as soon as you're like, okay, I need to take a breath, they're gone because they're down there.
Yeah, and that's part of what I'm trying to explain is that it's the sort of automatic action thing. We're doing it with chemistry, and you can sort of sweep somebody up into this energetic wave, and they can love it. They can love the attention, but it's almost like it's happening so quickly that they haven't, especially if it's a 9, like they haven't been able to register where they're at yet in terms of how they feel about it. But it's almost like you can sweep somebody up so quickly that once you step out of the picture, they're like, wait a minute, I don't even know if I like this person. I actually had an experience where I met another sexual 8, and she tried to pick me up, and it was the first time that I realized what I was doing. Like, I realized that you guys need to hear this story. I haven't said this.
Please tell us the story.
Tell it.
So I'm gonna try to be quick, but I drive for Uber. I do a lot of odd jobs, and that's one of them. And so if you've ever taken an Uber, there's a thing called Uber Pool, and which is just like a regular Uber, but multiple people are in the car. So on this Sunday, I was driving, and there was a Chicago Marathon, which meant that getting around was very difficult. So I'd stopped at this bus stop, and there was this lady, and I don't tend to look at my passengers. I don't know. I just stopped doing that because it just helps me not get caught up in their energy. And it also helps them to not get intimidated by whatever energy that I have, because that's kind of a weird thing that I have with men. Anyway, so she got in the car. Usually people get in the car with other people when there are other passengers. They don't really say much, or the people tend to be cautious. But she was just like, she had a very free and loose energy, and sometimes people start conversations with the driver, which is fine. But we got real personal real quick. Not in like an invasive kind of way, but it just sort of happened where we sort of got swept up. And I realized that, one, this is an assertive person, but the conversation went 0 to 1,000 very quickly. And she did not care that there was a lady sitting next to her. So the level of not giving a fuck was like, yo, this is an 8. And eventually she asked me, like, where are you from? Like, where are you born? And I said, I'm Nigerian. And she said, let me tell you, I know you might not believe this, but I think Nigerian men are the most beautiful men on planet Earth. She was so serious about it. And I'm like, what is happening? And then she just like kept going, and she said, like, and we did have a chemistry. Like, she was a theater performer, and she did some like really creative blend of inner work and performance, and it was sort of a thing a sexual 8 would create. It's like, I don't even know what the fuck it is. I can't even, but it's like a performance that's going to pull you into this world. And we were having these conversations. I was like, she's doing the sexual instinct thing. Like you know what it is, and you feel like you're falling into someone. I haven't even seen her face, and this was happening in the back seat. And so we couldn't get to where she was going. And at that point, I'd picked up some other people, and she didn't care. She said, let's just stop the ride. Let's go to lunch together right now. And I was like, I would love to do that, because I was getting high off the interaction as well. But there was another lady in the car, and I was like, let's just, we can do this some other day.
You could just eat the lady.
She was so brazen, and she was so like, it was so direct, and so and it was real too. Like, it wasn't like she was abrasive or anything, but it was like a real meeting of energy. And then so we exchanged information, and I looked her up on Instagram, and I shared. It was very clear that she was a sexual 8, and she was like almost like a poster child sexual 8. I'll share the links later. And part of me was like, "Yo, you do not want to fall into that bottomless pit. You do not like. You do not." And I hadn't really seen her, and I wasn't like sure. She's much older than I was, and I wasn't really sure I was attracted to her, but I was interested. So I got caught up with a 9 and got really burned because I was being ignored. And so out of like sexual instinct frustration, I hit her up and said, "Hey, we should meet up for coffee sometime." And she had responded immediately. She's like, "Here's my phone number. Let's try and, plan something, as soon as possible or whatever." And I was just like, I wanted the attention, and I loved the attention. She was so immediate. And so I texted her and I said, "Hey, when are you free for coffee this week?" And she said, "Actually, I'm having a dinner at my place with friends tonight." Can you, I was like, she's like, would you be comfortable coming over to my apartment to have, a dinner, very Italian dinner with friends, or would you be more comfortable just waiting to have a coffee later? So she put it out there, almost like challenging me to say, "Oh, you're gonna be a bitch," and not come
That's
over.
interesting that you took it that way.
I mean, yeah, I had I didn't know how else to take it.
She just wants you to feel comfortable. She gave you 2 options.
It did feel that way.
Okay, I believe you.
But it's just a weird thing for people to say. Like, it was just the way that it was framed. It was framed in such a way as like, you have this option to see me tonight, or if you want to like take it slow, you can come next week or something. Okay. Like a little bitch, you can take it slow. So I was like, "Okay, yeah, I'm gonna go over to your house or your apartment." And she was like, "What do you want to eat?" And it was just like a barrage of texts, and it was just so much attention. And I was like, "This is great, man." And so I went over there, and she was there with a friend, and it became very clear that I was getting swept up in something. She was making like, she's just really funny. She's making these jokes about how she was gonna lock me up in a dungeon somewhere or something like that. It was just like a real 8-to-8 interaction. And eventually the friend got up to leave. This was like after midnight, and I got up to leave with her because I wasn't like, I knew that she really wanted something sexual to happen. And I was like, I don't know if I'm ready to meet you with the kind of energy that you need, because I can feel the intense, whatever, tiger on tiger sexual encounter that you're needing. I don't know if I have that for you tonight. But I was trying to leave, and so she put her
little Emeka.
She put her hand on the door.
Yeah.
Wow. This story has taken so many times.
I mean, it wasn't like
a story.
It wasn't like some kind of overt, like she blocked me or anything, because I was being really kind of demure about it.
She was just making it a clear gesture. That's all.
She was making it clear that she wanted me. She made it clear that she wanted me to stay. But I don't like the problem is not the problem, but I was really hooked into her. Like we had a real chemistry. Like she was really interested in her work and in Enneagram, like Enneagram for real, not I don't want to say for real, but just like Gurdjieff Enneagram. And she was an astrologist, and like she's super creative. So it's just like I felt myself falling into like, I'm sure you guys have all experienced this, of being so attracted to someone's energy, their whole being, but not necessarily wanting to fuck them. And
what?
And or like, it's like I like this person.
I know what you mean.
Or it's like I know
what you mean.
Yeah. I know that I like this person so much that I wouldn't just, I don't know, just have throwaway sex with them. Like I know that it would be. I knew we were talking about relationships. We were talking about potentially having some kind of creative partnership. That's how far we went. And over the course of like 3 or 4 hours, we stayed up till like 3 or 4 in the morning. And so at some point she said, I don't want to mess up the phrasing.
Take your time.
I said, she said, "Would you like to share sex with me?" And it was so direct. And I said, I said, sure. And I could tell that she felt.
I'm sure that wasn't sufficient.
No. Yeah, she felt whatever energy I was bringing, and she laughed. Like that the answer wasn't. It wasn't what she wanted, and so I was at that moment very aware that, man, like, and so we kept talking. And
but you were aware of what? You were aware of what?
I was aware that, I knew what was happening. Like, I knew that she wanted something sexual to happen. But I was aware that she was very determined to try to make something happen. And I started to feel bad because I, of course, can empathize with how she feels because, I've been in that situation. So I'm telling the story because that was probably the most direct experience of my own personality being mirrored to me that I'd ever felt. The sense of being really swept up in something so enticing, but not necessarily feeling or not even being sure if you're ready to dive into the degree.
Yeah, it was like too soon.
Yeah, it felt like, wow, but the thing that was happening, I wanted to happen.
You just needed more time.
Probably, yes. Yeah, it happened so quickly. I was like, holy shit, how did I end up here? But the story continues. We kept talking, and I got up to leave again. Because she was like, oh, we could. I was like, I was making these fucking stupid excuses to try to delay things. I was like, you got to work at 7 a.m. We don't have to fuck now. We can fuck next week. That all these other things. And she said, okay, yeah, we could probably do that. And I got up to leave, and she's like we made out like really intensely. And then she like made eye contact with me, and we were in a staring contest for like 30 seconds. It's the longest staring contest I've ever had. I thought it was a staring contest, but that was her last ditch effort to get me to mount her, like to do it.
Wow. Yeah.
And I later figured that out, like, 'cause sex was so far from my mind in that moment. But I just, it was just like, this is the most, I've never been swept off my feet like this before. And
it reminds me, it reminds me so much of something that my father taught me probably when I was 14, and being an 8, he just sort of said things. But what I'm thinking you might have been experiencing is and he said to me, this is an Ed Peachism, LP, in life, make sure the screwing you get is worth the screwing you get. It's not just about sex.
Right.
It's about whatever you're investing your pearls into. And so, like, whatever you are investing your pearls into, and your energy and your interest and all of that investment is an investment. And whether it's a business deal or whether it's starting up a sexual relationship with her, it just makes sense. Like, make sure what you're getting is worth what you're putting into it.
That alludes to the automaticness also.
Right.
It's just going, right? So be sure, do you actually want to go where this is going?
And that was part of what I realized is like, this is my sexual drive. I knew that I had some reservations after I had met her because she was just a lot. She was a lot. And I was like, and so when I was sort of starved for attraction energy, sexual energy, that when I realized that, holy shit, like, I'm getting pulled into some serious shit here. This can't just be, any sort of casual thing. Not that I was looking for that, but this is a lot. This is a lot right now. And I really like this, but, that for the first time I realized, holy shit, this is what, even if I'm not realizing it, this is what my personality is doing. And there are a lot of these situations where I feel like, oh man, we had such a great chemistry. And I'm like, I'm creating all this chemistry. I swept this person up, and they kind of later go off on their own and they realize, I don't even know if I want that, but it was sort of just happened. And maybe for me, I don't even know to what degree that I wanted it. It was sort of happening automatically based on an initial spark, but it kind of, you're rushing it. Maybe you're trying to go, you're just speeding ahead, and
like the middle of it. Yeah. Like,
So that was the first time that I had an encounter with sexual 8, and it really helped me in a lot of ways to see, okay, this is maybe a more extreme example of my personality, but it's a similar dynamic that's going on.
I really appreciate you sharing that. That was a really interesting
Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
Being a sexual 8 and like a woman, you didn't say that she was too much. You said that she was a lot. And a real big trigger for me is like, if I've heard too many times, especially with partners, is like that I'm too much. And it's like, I'm just expressing that I love you. Like how can it possibly be too much? And so that's what's really cool about being with this 9, this amazing 9, that he's just like he asked me, he was like, what's like the thing that hurts you, that triggers you? And I'm like, being called too much. And so he's like reminding me very often that like, you're not too much. And man, I now that like, if you being a sexual 8 felt like this sexual 8 was too much, I feel so bad for my boo. Like,
wait a minute. I should preface that by saying that once I'll send a link in the chat, you guys will 100% understand why I felt that way. She is one of a kind in the world of eights in general, and sexual 8s. This is probably one of the most extreme examples. Like, her energy is, it's a lot. It's a lot. You would imagine that it's like, I think you guys are definitely way more chill than she is. So definitely she's a lot.
Okay, I have to say, I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah.
Cool. What a great story. I'm glad you made it out alive.
Yeah, I'm glad you didn't get locked in a dungeon.
No, I mean, I feel like
she just needed an Uber driver. That's all.
I wanted to keep him around.
Leave. I gotta go to the airport in the morning.
What makes me sad is that part of me, like, I really liked her, and I knew that I wanted to keep hanging out with her, but I knew that us hanging out was always going to be under the subtext of something potentially sexually happening, and I didn't want the feeling of having to reject her, I guess I'd have to like have that conversation with her. But even if I did have that conversation with her, I know my personality, like, no is just the beginning. so I could have said no, that I'm not interested in her sexually, and she would have, if we, got along even more and we had chemistry, like, it was going to end up there. And so I just felt like I don't want to say no to this woman. I don't want to sexually reject her, because I know what that feels like. And even though we would get along great and we have all this great chemistry and all these similarities, and we have all this stuff that we can learn from each other, like, I know what's on the other end of that personality, and it would suck. It would suck to like, not.
Well, that's really good that you were honest with yourself about that, and that you were able to like see that. And
yeah,
I'm dating her now.
You're dating her?
Surprise.
John.
Yeah, that's my sexual 8 story.
That was the best story that has ever been told on this podcast.